Hi, and welcome to Centre Church. We hope that you enjoy this message recorded live from our Burgess Hill campus.
So this morning, what we wanted to do was bring to a close our series on the anatomy of gratitude, and we're going to do it by just a bit of a backwards and forwards Q&A, but we picked the questions, so they're not too curly. But we're gonna answer 5 questions that we think are good examples of the way gratitude has outworked itself in our lives over the years. So for those of you that don't know all that much about us, we've been married for 27 years. I got it right. I still hold the honour of not forgetting our wedding anniversary, where someone else has forgotten our wedding anniversary.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know who that is.
Let it go.
So, yes, 27 years married. We met at Bible College in Australia. And by the way, those that were at the conference yesterday, that Australian accent is not normal. That's very much a farming accent. So
It's a real Australian
that's a
accent.
real Australian. They call it ochre accent. So, yeah, when he was climbing up the tree and wasn't going to get out of it, that was, we don't talk like that. All right, so we're gonna look at 5 questions, and we're going to jump straight in. First question is going to come up on the screen for us. Yes, we're going to talk about gratitude. Actually, there you go. Look at that. Some scriptures. They'll come in handy at the end, so we might have to flick back to those. But here's the first question. How has your relationship with gratitude evolved throughout your life? Emma.
I think this is really interesting because I grew up in quite an affluent family. I had both my parents worked full-time. My dad ran his own company. My mum was in the health industry. So I grew up with very little initially, and then as my parents started to become successful in their career, we started to get a little bit more. I went to a private school, so when you start kind of work through that culture and this elitist started to kind of creep in, and you forget what you have and you kind of expect instead of being thankful. And so it's been an evolution for me to kind of realise that my life is what it is because I have an incredible God who saved my dad and saved my parents and allowed me to grow up in a church and realise that we don't have anything without Jesus. And everything is so temporal, and you can have materialism, but if you lose everything, you lose your soul. What's the point? So for me, gratitude has been the simplest of things. It's when you grow up in that culture. And I used to go, as a family, our family holiday was skiing. We'd go skiing every year, and it was great until I got to adulthood and I realised that when I had to pay for it, it wasn't so great. And so you kind of realise I think as I got into adulthood, I realised that everything is, you're grateful for the simple things, for the things that can be passed on to your kids, and you realise what the important things of life. So money management, having really good work ethic, being committed to learning, being teachable, not having an attitude of expectation that I've arrived. But actually being grateful for the smallest of things and realising that, it takes a community. In regards to our wedding anniversary, Madison was 3 months old, so all the mums understand exactly what happens when you have a 3-month-old. But I think you become so grateful for the community and the network of people around you that can help you do life. And you never want to be isolated. And so I became very great. It's now such a foundational part of who we are and what is important to our family. It's a huge family value for us that everything can be taken away in a moment, but it's the simplest of things that we are grateful for.
So I was the other side of that coin. I grew up in a single income family in what was called the western suburbs of Sydney, or colloquially known as a Westie, or more affectionately, a bogan. I don't know if you've ever heard of that phrase. Basically, a bogan is someone that gets around in blue jeans, a checkered shirt, and Ugg boots. That's their standard dress. It's become fashionable now. When I was growing up, it was, if you dressed like that, that was like there's something wrong with you. Now, everybody seems to want to dress like that. And Ugg boots cost an absolute fortune to buy. They've become a well-known brand around the world, and you will pay lots of money to wear a pair of Ugg boots. But I grew up single income. My dad was an electrician. He worked really hard to put food on our table, to keep us just to keep us going. We didn't have a lot. We didn't go on skiing holidays. We all piled in the car and drove to see one of two of his brothers. We either went north to see his brother up on the border of Queensland, or we went south down to South Australia, both of which were 11-hour or more drives in the car. As you can imagine, as a young boy, the thought of being stuck in a car for that many hours was somewhat frustrating. But it was good fun. And so I guess I always had a level of gratitude because I watched how hard my dad worked just to make things happen for us so that we could afford to have just something, some stuff, Christmas present, whatever. And he would always go out of his way to do that. So I grew up with this level of gratitude. And then we went through a bit of a family turmoil. My dad passed away when I was 20. My sister was 11. And so I became less thankful because I didn't understand what God was doing during that time. But what God then proceeded to do was bring into my life a series of people that just cared for me. So I was dating a girl at the time. Her parents became like almost surrogate parents to me, and they looked after me and made sure I stayed on the straight and narrow. And then just over the course of the years, God has kept putting people in my life who have exemplified gratitude or being thankful. Just they lived it out. They modeled it. And some of it was directed towards me, and some of it was just the way they lived their life. And so I have gone through this developing style, I guess, of gratitude in my life. It was when I met Emma and her family, I was so impressed with her dad, who is the most generous person I probably know. And so that's just another person in my life that's modeled being thankful or being grateful for everything that you have, and then being generous with that. That's sort of how I've gone through life. So I've always had this gratitude for people that work hard and do their best to support their family. So, yeah, that was for me. That's how it sort of evolved throughout my life. Question 2. Can you describe a time, I'll get these glasses checked, Specsavers, here I come, a time when someone's gratitude, I think I'm jet lagged still, toward you made a significant impact? Okay, so when my dad passed away. I was at uni at the time. I was living 500 kilometres, so what's that, 350 mile, I guess, away from home at university. And God He spoke to me I consider it an audible voice. I was walking down the hallway of the dormitory and I heard God say to me, go and ring your family and tell them you're coming home. And I straight away, on the back of what I've just shared with you, single income family, struggling, was helping to put me through university. So giving every spare dime they had to help me go to university. I just didn't understand how I was going to ring them and say I'm coming home. And so that was a challenge. To keep the story short, obviously Dad passed away, but in the months between the time I stopped uni and the time he passed away, our relationship solidified quite significantly. So I got a really good understanding of what it meant to have a father who was active and present in my life. And that was not because he didn't try before. I was something of a wayward child. And so I did my own thing a lot and disappeared off and for hours and days, and then I'd come home or whatever. But then I came to faith as I'd come to faith as a 16-year-old, but then when he passed away, I assumed the responsibility of the house, cared for my mum who wasn't working. She had no real skills to work. My sister was still in primary school. She was only 11. But then God opened this opportunity to go to Bible college. And at Bible college, people in the church that I was going to at the time just started blessing me. So when my first year at Bible college, we had a guy in our church who was a psychologist, I think he was. Yeah, he was a psychologist. But he worked in their computer department. And so he gave me an old 286, so the old school. And I thought that was like the bee's knees. 286 was just the best. I didn't have to use a typewriter to write my assignments. I could use a computer and a printer. And then the next year, he rang me up and said, "Hey, come over." And he said, "Bring the old computer." And I went, "Okay, no worries." So I brought the computer and he said, "Give me that one. I've got a 386 for you." And so I went, wow, an upgrade. This is awesome. And then again in my third year, same thing, phone call. Bring the old computer back. And he gave me, I think was it a Pentium?
Yes, that's
Yeah. So he gave me a Pentium. So I jumped over 486 and went to Pentium, which was like, and some people look at me going, "What are you talking about?" I don't even know, but yes, I just remember all of the brands and the numbers. And this gentleman, the significance is that he was going through a breakup in his marriage. His kids were wrestling with faith. There was such a division in their family that one was pitting against the other. Not that he was pitting himself against the wife, but she was trying to win the affection of the children and draw them away from church. Now, the beauty of this story is she came to faith, and now he's passed away now, but they got on for a number of years. They never reconciled, but they got on for a number of years and co-parented their kids, and their kids are absolutely flourishing. So they're doing a great job. But this guy's generosity impacted me so greatly because we couldn't afford computers. The best I could do was a typewriter. And I watched some people at college use typewriters, and I thought, I'm so glad that I don't have to use a typewriter. and so that's just that. I mean, I could give you hundreds of stories, but that one significantly impacted me. Yeah.
I think also with that story, Paul had really spent a lot of time connecting with their kids. And two of the boys, I think at one point, David ended up in hospital or broke his leg or did something, and Paul was there the whole time in the hospital. And so it's interesting that when we do something really small that we feel is insignificant, that the impact to somebody else is actually it's life-changing. And I think as I was thinking about this question, I'm like, I could tell you loads of stories, and there's not just one. But I think it's just the realization that something that may not cost me a lot or may not be a big deal to me is a huge deal to somebody else. We had someone stay with us a couple of weeks ago and kind of just over a day, and they were travelling, and I travel a lot, and I know what it's like to kind of try and cram everything you can into a bag and try and not do checked luggage because it takes forever to get. And so we were kind of talking about that. And in our bathroom, someone had given me small bottles of Jo Malone perfume. I never would purchase it, but they had given it to me. It's not really my thing, but I thought, it looks pretty in the bathroom. Anyway, they had this person that was staying with us noticed.
I thought that was mouthwash.
I'm so glad. Oh, dear. Anyway, so they had noticed this, and they asked me about it and said, did you buy it? Is it cheaper here? And I said, well, actually, I don't know. And I said, and she'd mentioned that she said, oh, that's really lovely. She said, I took the liberty of taking a few squirts. I said, you can take the whole bottle. And she went, what do you mean? And I said, if you like it. Take a couple if you want to. And she'd mentioned that she'd just run out of perfume and all this kind of stuff. And it was such a big deal to her. Whereas I'm like, I'm not devaluing the gift, but it's something there that I'm like, there's 6 bottles. She took 2. There's still 4 left. But for me, it just didn't feel like it was such a big deal. But for her, it was so significant. One, because I think she saw the value of it, having to purchase it, but also the simplicity of the gift. And I think for us, it's the gratitude, the genuine gratitude of you doing something. Sometimes it's not just, hey, I'm bringing something to the table, or, you did something for me, so I'm going to do something for you. It's not that. Something that we find is so simple, even your time, sometimes your expertise, sometimes introducing someone to somebody else, or something along those lines. It doesn't always have to be monetary, and it doesn't always have to be a thing. It can just be a listening ear, or, hey, have you thought about this? And I think that's the bit for me that is so impactful when you get that realization that you have something to give, and someone is grateful and truly grateful for what you have contributed. This church is a huge example of that. Like everything. People were here yesterday serving. People are here every Sunday serving. There's people behind the scenes, but there is genuine gratitude. Everyone has something to give. And we are so, so thankful for everybody that may not be in the spotlight, but are definitely making this happen.
Yeah. True. Question 3. What's the difference between toxic positivity and genuine gratitude?
I love this question for several reasons. So I'm pretty optimistic. I tend to kind of, I'm a glass half full girl. I'm not, I tend not to be pessimistic. But toxic positivity, I think the challenge with that is when we just are so positive all the time and everything's great and everything's fabulous and life is wonderful. And I'm like, who are you and what world are you living in? So what is interesting about toxic positivity is it actually diminishes what is real life. The Bible says in John 16, I think 16:33, it says, in this world you will have trouble. You will face hard times. Spoiler alert. But it also says at the end of that verse, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. And I think there's positivity. Toxic positivity actually takes you to a level of anxiety and pretty much sticks you in a ball that says life is a little bit of denial that, life is this wonderful dream, and it's really not. Whereas genuine gratitude is an acknowledgement that life is hard. So Mayo Clinic in the US have released a study that your brain cannot process anxiety and gratitude at the same time. It can only do one or the other. So which I find fascinating, because it's amazing how science can qualify Scripture. But so when you're kind of in anxiety, in a mental state, if you start to actually be positive and start to be thankful and start to be grateful for the small things, and you start to just speak out, well, God, I'm thankful that the sun's shining today. I'm thankful that everything's running on time. Your brain can only process one. So all of a sudden, your anxiety levels go down, and your gratitude, your positive, like your brain changes. And I think that for me is such a big deal. Like, it's so scriptural that we are going to have hard times. We are going to have those moments of panic. We are going to have those moments of, oh my goodness, what are we doing? We've all had them. We can count some of them. Some of us have had that this morning before we've even walked in the door. Some of us have had it since we walked in the door. But in all of that, it's this moment of take a breath. God, we're just thankful. Okay, now we can go. And so I think toxic positivity puts us in a place where it's unrealistic. We live in a world that, we have to put on a mask. We have to put on some kind of front, I guess. There's not the genuine kind of authenticity of who we are, but as we are grateful, as we have that and we practice being grateful and speak it out, that our brain and our body can only process one at the time. So if I've got a choice, I'll choose gratitude.
Yeah, that's good. I guess it's, we shouldn't be grateful for every circumstance that we face. I mean, was I grateful when my dad passed away at 42? Well, no, I wasn't. But what I was grateful for was the people that came around me and supported me. And so I saw in them generosity and a genuine love for me that made me grateful and made me sense that God hadn't forgotten me in the midst of a difficult situation. It's often this balance, it's this for or in. We don't have to be grateful for every circumstance, but what we do need to do is see how God is working in that situation, and then that's where our gratitude can come from. And so we look to what He's doing underneath the surface or alongside, running concurrently with the situation that we're facing. So yeah, That's it. Difference between toxic positivity, and we've all met them. We've all met people that they're just always up. But let's be honest, it's hard to be always up. Sometimes life throws you a curveball, and you just have to look to God and trust God. And David is a great example. You read his Psalms, and he's just so straight with God, so honest. Things are not working out the way I want them to, God, but I trust that you will come good in the end. So, question 4. How has practicing gratitude changed the way you see the world? Yeah, for me, it's definitely been, I've just watched people model gratitude, and it's made me see that even though, just referring back to the last response, even though we will face hard times and we will face challenges, God is working all things together for good for those that love Him. Now, we were when we were in America recently, we were talking about this idea of God being slow. But God's not slow. God is always right on time. His timing is perfect. And so for me, I've just watched, even in the midst of difficult situations like the loss of a parent, like a dream that sort of fell apart at one point, and I just couldn't see how that could be turned around. God was at work in that situation. And so these things have shaped the way I look at the world. And so I'm always thankful that God will lead me through whatever it is I might be facing. And I do recognize that it's not always going to be, as we say in Australia, it's not always going to be beer and Skittles. So...
Sunshine and rainbows.
Sunshine, yeah, maybe that translates better here. But the reality is, life can be hard. But God is always there, and that's what I've seen, and so that's helped me to be able to focus on the knowledge that God is doing something in my life. I might not see it just yet, but He's doing something. So, yeah.
I think world is hard, as Paul said, and I think, as I've discovered kindness, and as I've put gratitude into practice, you realise that people are just, it's given me more grace, I guess, for people, and given me more patience. And after I read that study from Mayo Clinic, it's interesting that we have a choice. We can choose anxiety, we can choose gratitude. Which one? Well, I'll choose gratitude because the effects on your body for that kind of stress and anxiety is significant. And Mayo Clinic actually talks about helping to build the generosity or the gratitude muscle, because it actually has a massive impact on your body, on your well-being. But I think alongside of that, it's God kindness. Roma talks about it's God's kindness that leads us to repentance. And I think when we have that simple gratitude, it makes us much more aware of our surroundings. I think it's a humility that comes when you're grateful for the smallest thing. then arrogance doesn't have any place in that. There's no ego in that. There's nothing. We're here to serve and we're here to do what we need to. And you realise that the smallest of things is insignificant, like who gets credit, who doesn't, and, all of that. When you know and you have your feet firmly planted, we talked about it, I will build my life on your love. We've sung about it this morning. We've done all that. When you know whose you are, then you can be grateful for the smallest of things, knowing that God has it covered. I have a pretty hard, it can be somewhat stressful job sometimes, and when you're pioneering something, it can be hard work, but at the same time, it's like, you know what, at the end of the day, it's not about me, it's about this is what we need to do. You can persevere and you can pursue and you can do all of those things. And there's lots of people here that are in all different shapes and, different walks of life, but we can do that. If we can just be thankful for today, if you can start your day that way, it's a great, not only does it help you physically, but it does help you mentally and gives you that perspective, but it also forces you to just take a minute and just think about where you're at.
Question 5. If you had to choose 3 things you're most grateful for in your entire life, what would they be?
First thing, I am most thankful that my dad had us in church every week. Every Sunday since I was 4 years old, my dad made sure we were in church. Bribery worked. Parents, to get us into church, Dad used to say to us, our church started at 9:30, Dad would say, if you're ready by 8:15, we'll go to McDonald's for breakfast. Guess who was ready at 8:15? All 4 kids. We were in the car, they were at McDonald's. McDonald's is 3 minutes from our church. But it built in us, where there was, our family life was was chaotic and challenging it in most of the time. But there was, thing about being in church every Sunday was where there was weakness in my family, I saw strength in others. I had people speak into my life. I saw what it was like in marriage to fight fair. I saw what it was like to raise kids and have boundaries. I saw what it was like to have people speak into your world and to genuinely come alongside you, where it was, that may or may not have been available. I didn't have a huge, there were 6 kids in our family, so it was chaos anytime. But we didn't have a lot of aunts and uncles and cousins. We were a pretty fragmented family. But that's the first thing, very important. Being in church every Sunday. I'm thankful for a life partner that loves me enough to tell me, when I'm doing great and when I'm not doing great.
Who's that?
Well, yeah. I'm good. But see?
Sorry, I'm tired.
Jet lag.
These jokes are getting worse, aren't they?
They're just not even jokes. But I am thankful. I remember when we were getting married, I remember saying at our wedding, I had a career opportunity come up just before we got married, and it was working for a significant organisation, US-based organisation in Australia called Tyco International. And they were like, yeah, we want to give you a full-time job and all this. And I'm like, not really up for me. And so I went and took another job with a bank, and Paul was so supportive. And I remember saying, he may not always agree, but he's supportive, and he tells me what he thinks. And he's willing to do the journey with me. And I think that is so important, to have somebody that will walk through life with you, will bring you back to Scripture, will have boundaries. Paul is the first man that ever said no to me. My dad, being one of 2 daughters, my dad and I are incredibly close. And because he grew up in incredible poverty, tried to make it so that we could have everything we wanted. Well, of course, you raise a spoiled... I wasn't spoiled. Was I? I had an expectation.
I'm going to answer this wisely. No, honey.
I think I remember a comment that when we were just new into our marriage, and Paul said to me, because I'm like, oh, it's okay, Dad will pay for it, was my thing, Dad was just a checkbook. And I remember saying, we must have been 6 months married or something. And I remember saying, he's okay, Dad will pay for it. And he's like, okay, here's the deal. He's like, this is going to be a very short marriage if you think your father's going to pay for everything. He said, we do it ourselves or we don't do it. I went, oh, okay, yes. But it was like then, and I wasn't great with money back then because I always had an out. If I went down a path that got me in trouble, Mum and Dad would bail me out. And as much as I'm grateful for it now, I'm kind of very thankful for a husband that put his foot down and went, no, this is not how this works. So we've had to learn that kind of thing. And I think, I'm going to say it, but I think alongside of having a husband that's like that, it's having kids that keep it real and are respectful and kind. My daughter is back there nodding her head, but they are great truth serum when you have children. They remind me that I'm a mother first and then I'm an employee. They remind me that I can do lots of things. They remind me that I think the most rewarding thing, the thing I'm most grateful for, was when our kids said, we are thankful that you put boundaries in place. We are thankful we learnt accountability. And I'm like, oh my goodness, let me sit down. And you realise that actually parenting is one of the most incredible gifts, whether that's a spiritual parent or a physical parent, but I think it's one of the most incredible gifts. So they're probably the three things I'm most thankful for.
Very good. Very good. Yeah, for me, family is probably the first thing. I had no intention of getting married, and I thought it was the fastest car I could find with the largest engine capacity and to go as quickly as I could was going to be my life.
Graham!
But God had another idea, and that idea was way better than mine. Way better than mine. So I'm thankful for Emma. I'm thankful for what she brings to our marriage and also what she brings to our parenting and just our relationship in general. I'm thankful for both of our kids, both very different, both have very different personalities, but both are resilient. The resilience that our kids show is amazing. You may or may not know, but they've lived on 3 continents throughout their schooling time, have learnt 3 different curriculums to get to the end of their schooling. If you want to know anything about World War II on any of those 3 continents, our kids can tell you because they've studied them all. They have the working knowledge from every angle that you can think of. And trust me, they're all different. Every country thinks they were the best at it. So definitely family is a massive one for me. Again, growing up with, in my formative years, like I said, I'd become a Christian at 16, but my dad wasn't a person of faith, though I hang on to the fact that I'm pretty sure he was making a decision in his last moments. But I don't know that, and I'm trusting God with that one. But I had, just my parents were awesome. My dad encouraged me. When I told him I was going to start going to church, as a non-church guy, he said to me, in far more colourful words than I can use here on this platform, but he basically said to me, don't mess them around. If you're going to commit to this, commit to it 100%. So you be there. You go to whatever they put on that is for you. So I was at youth every Wednesday. I was at church at least twice on a Sunday from the age of 16, purely because my dad taught me about commitment. And that I've lived that out in all areas of my life. So whether it was work or church or whatever, family, it's all about committing to it long term. And so I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful for the family of God, the broader church. I mean, we've lived in a number of different places. We've travelled extensively. We've been in lots of different church settings. But there's one thing about church, wherever you go around the world, they're family and they love you. I mean, we had an instance where we drove, at one point, when we were moving to England in 2014, we drove from LA across to New Mexico, up through Texas, all the way up to the top of Michigan, and then to Washington, D.C., to catch a train to New York. On the way, we stopped in a church Crosspoint Church in, what town was it?
St. Louis,
St. Louis.
Missouri.
And we literally turned up at this church because Emma had supported a... Yeah, you tell the story because I don't...
I'm a big fan of worship music and worship leader for a long time. So I had found this guy on kind of his worship in the church on YouTube, and they were doing a crowdfunding. And so I said, yeah, I'll give you $50 because I loved what their music was, loved some of the songs. And so we did this. And then as a result of that, you got an album, which they were going to send to me in Australia. And I went, well, actually, I'm about to move to the other side of the world. Can we just come pick it up?
Yeah, so we drove up the middle of the States, stopped at St. Louis, went to this church on a Wednesday night, which was their prayer meeting. But just the way they welcomed us and took us out to dinner afterwards, they didn't even know us. Like, we were literally strangers, but they loved on us. And that's been our experience all over the world. We've had people that have literally just accepted us from day one, and you are part of that. You've put up with my crazy Australian accent, my silly jokes, you guys have just loved us, and we're very thankful for that. So you're part of that broader, what's the word I want to use? The broader scheme of things, yeah, I guess. Scope, panorama, whatever. But yeah, so they're the things for me. So we've said all this to say this. I'm going to finish with this bit. Gratitude is something that we have to choose to do. It's very easy to allow your life circumstances to dictate your level of gratitude. You can look at the things that are happening to you and go, well, I'm going to end up bitter and twisted about this. I'm not going to be happy about it. Or you can say, no, I'm going to choose to be thankful. I'm going to choose gratitude. And so we've made that decision. That's been our decision. So as the band comes back up, I just want to say to people in the room, if you have not experienced God in a very real way, in a personal way, can I say to you that the greatest example of gratitude known to the world is that God gave his Son as a gift to us. Jesus came and he gave his life for us. And so I can't think of anything more to be thankful for, to be grateful for. Come on, guys, come on up. So yeah, if you don't know for sure that you are walking with God, that you are not confident that God is in your life and that you recognize Jesus as your Lord and Savior, then please come and see us. Either myself, you can speak to Emma, Tom, who's leading here. He's one of our pastors. We would love to talk to you about coming to know Jesus in a personal way.
Following today's message, if you are asking what's next, please do not hesitate to contact us at info@centre-church.uk. For any more information or to find out more of what we do as a church, check out our website at www.centrechurch.uk.